Well, welcome. This is Pastor Dan, and this is God Talk. We're in a little different environment. I hope it looks about the same to you. But the usual studio is being redone. Every few years, they have a chance to reconfigure. So there's a lot going on with LOBN. So they have us in a different place, and we're happy to be with you today. So I'm going to try something maybe a little different, but it's something I care about a lot. And, as all these churches around are still closed, most are closed around me. The one that I preach at the most now in retirement is La Sierra Spanish Church, and they voted to wait another month. My brother's church is meeting in the breezeway, and a few people come. Other people are still watching online. So that's the place that we're doing this. And how to be church. I just wanted to somehow speak to that. I wish I could show you pictures. I have pictures for all this, but we don't really have that set up here. There was a young man who ended up on a desert island. And after 6-7 years, like Tom Hanks in Castaway, he gets rescued. And he's on a boat, and the captain, and they're looking back at their island, and there were 3 huts. So the captain said, what are the 3 huts for? Oh, he said, the first hut, that was my house. I built that. And the second hut was my church. I had a little church. And then he said, what was the third hut? He said, that was my new church after I got mad at the old church. He's all by himself. Still mad at the church. Church is fantastic, but it can also drive you crazy. Yes, it can. And we could all tell stories. I probably know as many stories as anybody. I'm a pastor. I probably caused half the stories. It's just part of church, a human place, and stuff happens. Church can be politics. Church can be boring. Church can have hypocrites. It can seem like it's always talking about money. Dead microphones when someone goes up to speak and the microphone's not working. It's always something. I was taping for LOBN the other night for another show, and I couldn't get the clicker to work. Well, no one told me I needed to turn it on. Slides didn't work. It's always some little thing that, why didn't that work better? No matter how hard you seem to try. I moved to La Sierra Church back in the 90s. So it's finally my first big Sabbath of the new school year, my first school year as a college pastor. Scared to death, excited. Had a big service and a choir. After church, I found out a young man had come about 11:45, long hair, tattoos, all that stuff, T-shirt. He wasn't coming to church. He was coming to pick up his girlfriend who was singing in the choir. And, but somebody, my deacons, deaconesses, somebody out there, we don't know who, said to him, young man, you really aren't dressed good enough to be in church. You need to wait outside. He told his mother, I'll never go to that church again. She told me, I went and found him, apologized, and he became my friend. And he did come back to church, and we told everybody, people can come to church any way they want. We're just glad they come. Yes, I believe in doing your best for God, but the doors are open. A friend of mine went to a church. He was teaching in a seminary, and he was the afternoon seminar speaker, but he went for the morning. No one greeted him. No one gave him a bulletin. No one ushered him to a seat. Church, had to find his own way to the potluck. Finally, 3 o'clock, it was his time, and he's got some chemicals about this now. So he said to the church, you really need to be more friendly. I've been here all day. No one has talked to me, greeted me, given me a bulletin, where to sit, anything. So now they felt bad. After his seminar was over, they said, we're really a great, friendly church, but all the friendly people were gone today. Church. And we could tell 100 more stories. I just wanted to give a testimony, I guess, of why I still love the church. Even though all these stories, and I could tell the stories, I still love the church. I'm retired. No one pays me to be part of a church, but I still love the church. I was at a dinner the other day. A pastor who's been a friend of mine for a long time, gone overseas with me, said to me, I'm getting his head kicked in by a couple elders in his church. He's a great pastor. Just a load to carry. Another pastor, been my friend for 25 years, said, church he's at right now, he said, there's one elder that calls him every day. Where are you right now? What are you doing? Why aren't you out visiting? Every day. Wants the pastor to be accountable, and it says, I'm going to be like your boss. I believe in visiting, but that's just not right to do to a pastor. Stories. Church. If I had $1 for every time a college kid came up to me and said, Pastor Dan, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Or I love Jesus, but I'm not sure about the church, organized religion. As if we can do life. Watch a program on the air, okay, that's good. Go to the beach, say a prayer once in a while, read poetry, listen to music, and we think, I'm a spiritual person. You don't have to be in a church to be a spiritual person. But Jesus started a church. He said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Wants a church. I finished 45 years of being a pastor. And I had my last Sabbath a year ago last week. I've been retired a year. 500 people showed up. You know, the church members, my old friends from other churches came, my brothers, my family came. Somewhere in the middle of that service, I got a brainstorm to invite everyone to come forward who I've baptized, did a wedding for. I don't know how many would be there that day, you know. They began to come down the aisle. So I got someone to take a picture. Here was this big crowd, filled up the whole platform and all the front of the church. Pretty special. Potluck, afternoon, another baptism, one final baptism. 2 kids got into the water who hadn't planned to be baptized, and did them too. We took pictures with the Filipino and Vietnamese groups till 11:30 that night. Got home, Hilda and the boys and I sat there looking at pictures and the book they gave us. Just basking. Church. 10 years there, 45 years. Churches. Flew back to Chicago a couple months after retirement. There was a group we had 30 years before called 20-something in Hinsdale, Chicago. Group of young people, some of my older members helped me gather this group together. I was really tangential to it. But the magic happened, and they began to come to church. They began to be our praise team and our drama team and active in our church. Wonderful people. And now, 30 years later, they had a reunion, and they paid for Hilda and I to come be there. I got to speak, got to preach in my old church. They were the praise team, they were the drama. Whole group of them sitting there. It's church. We were staying in some friend's house, and we walked along the sidewalk, and someone watering their plants yelled, "Hey, Pastor Dan. We were in church yesterday. Nice to have you back." We're walking on the sidewalk, another lady. "Hey, Pastor Dan. I was in church yesterday. We came just before you left, 25, 30 years before." Church. I have church all over the world. I get off the plane in the Philippines, and here they are to greet me. I have a little banner. People we've done crusades with all over the Philippines. I've been going 30-some times. Go out to eat. The last time we were over there, October, November, we didn't know that we wouldn't be able to go again this year with all the virus. So we had a few hours between the flight from Vietnam till we came home. A couple of people met us in a coffee shop. Somehow they texted, a couple more people came. Pretty soon there were probably 15 of us. No one wanted to leave. 3 hours, we're hanging out. They want to be with us, we want to be with them. So no one will see each other again. Planning for the future. Church. Romans 16. Most people never even read it. You may be reading the Bible through, you get to Romans 8, okay, that's where the theology is. Romans 9, 10, 11 is all about predestination. They get to Romans 16 and they just scan through it, go to 1 Corinthians. Because it has all these, greet so-and-so. Paul's writing and he says, greet so-and-so, greet so-and-so, they came and visited me in jail. Greet so-and-so, we were shipwrecked together. Greet so-and-so, they were my first baptism. I call it Romans 16. Most people would say it's just a list. But if Paul were here, he would say, don't you dare call that just a list. If you've listened to me very long, you'll know that I married Hilda. She was a member of the church where I was pastoring. Her family were not Adventist. They came over from Holland. Parents were unhappy with the public school, put their kids in a local church school, happened to be an Adventist school. Just chance. By God. Sent them back to an Adventist high school later, paid for all that tuition to go to a boarding school. Senior year, she made a decision to be baptized. No one told her anything about transferring membership, so 10 years later, she's gone on to graduate school and is working. But she and another lady did music in my father's church, and my father asked a few questions, found out where her membership was. Dan, you're her pastor. I was single. So my father and I made a pastoral visit. And we went there and played the whole thing out. A week later, I called her for a concert date, and we got married 2 years later. Before that, she was just a name on a list. We were going to drop all these people. We didn't know where they were. We didn't know where she was. She's not just a name on a list anymore. Been married 33 plus years. You go to a cemetery. We go to France, go to Normandy, go to Punch Bowl in Arizona, in Hawaii. We like to read those little inscriptions on a cross. These guys got off a little landing craft and at 5 o'clock in the morning, landed in the cold water, came onto the beach, and they knew they had to get to the top of that cliff by tonight or they would all die. A lot of them did die in that cemetery, 10,000, I think. And you read the inscriptions. You know, they're 19, 20, 21 years old. You know there's a story, there's a wife, there's a girlfriend, there's parents. It's not just a list, 10,000 people. Every one of those stands for someone, a family somewhere. Every day on television now, in newspapers, we have this list, COVID. How many people died, hospital, sick? By city, by state, by country, by the world. And just, you could say it's just a list. It's just a cumulative total of how bad it is. That every one of those is a person. Family, someone is grieving, someone's life is over, they don't get to live the rest of their life. One died yesterday, actor, 41, I think. Heartbreaking, picture in the paper today. Don't just call it a list. And Paul would say, don't you call that a list. These are the people that he's baptized, people that he's gone on trips with, people he was shipwrecked with, people who came to bring him food in the prison. These are his church. Romans 16. And I've got Romans 16 all over the world. Who's your Romans 16? Fred Craddock, I got this idea from Fred Craddock. Old now, but he was a great preacher, taught preaching, wrote great books about preaching. He had a famous sermon called When the Roll is Called Down Here. Classic sermon on preaching today. So I took the idea and then made my own sermon. He talked about going to his first church in the Appalachian Mountains. Once a year, they would have a baptism, go down to the river, kind of a little sandbar there, put up some blankets, a little changing rooms, make a big fire. And here he is, brand new young kid pastor, baptized the new believers. Then they would come into where those blankets were and get warmed up and changed and come sit on the fire. And the new baptisms would sit by the fire, and the church members would stand around them. And one would say, my name is so-and-so. And if you ever need someone to run some errands, call on me. Next one, my name is. You ever need someone to watch your kids while you run some errands? I'll be the one. Next one, my name is. If you need someone to chop wood for you, I'll come over and chop wood for you. Round the circle. Welcome the new members to the church. Romans 16. There would come a time, 10, 11 at night, people would begin to go home. Finally, it would just be the head elder and the pastor. Kick some sand on the fire. Head elder said to the pastor, just a kid, folks don't get any closer than that. It's church. Whenever you get frustrated and tired of the church because of all the problems, don't forget this other stuff, the other parts, Romans 16 part. You can decide which way you want to look at it. Michael Jordan, I was in Chicago in the Michael Jordan years. If you made a video of all the times Michael Jordan missed the shot, lost the ball, lost the game, did not make the last shot, you would think, boy, this guy doesn't need to be in the league. If you skipped all the ones he did make. And the 6 championship banners hanging in Chicago Stadium. You can look at the church for the stuff we don't get right. The dead mics and the angry words from somebody in board meetings. There's things I don't miss about that. But I miss some of the other. We don't get to be together now. Everyone's watching on a computer, on a phone, or television. And I just wanted to say, don't forget the church, the group of people together. I worked on my list last week, worked a long time. I had 3,400 contacts in my list, just hadn't worked on it. So I sat down, I got to boil this down. So I cut it down to about 1,900. Some people have died, businesses gone, people I don't remember who they were, I typed in for some reason. But when I was done, I had 1,950. I made an email list, 1,100 some of those addresses are old now, came back. But I've had people write me from all over the world this weekend. Romans 16. Whenever there's a disaster, who goes? Haiti has an earthquake and terrible problems, no water, stuff. Who goes down there? Not Hindus. These are good religions. I'm not trying to throw too many rocks here. But they don't usually get a boat and go down there, fly down there. Islam not. Not Confucius followers. Not atheists for sure. Not secular humanists. It's Christians. It's the church. Raise a bunch of money, fly down there, pass out water, do whatever they can to help out. You go down to Ebola. Whenever there's a crisis somewhere, it's usually the church. Put some money together, get some clothes together, starts clinics, starts schools, goes into countries. It's the church. So whenever you want to complain about the church, don't forget this part. Just put that in the mix. Who's giving food banks today? Church that we go to now, the La Sierra Spanish, every other week, 150, 200 families. People are feeding. Yes, others do it. The Sikh temples do it. Mostly the church. It's the church. Where do you go to talk about the most important things in the world? I got this idea from a guy named Jay Adams. Great talk. You go to the barber shop, you can talk about the gossip of what's going on. I get a lot of gossip there, probably contribute. Talk about the sports, weather, what's going on. You go to bars, I suppose. I don't go. Cheers. But where are you going to go to talk about the big things, the stuff that really matters? We talk about ontological reality, these great metaphysical, where do we come from? Where are we going? What really matters? How are you the most human? It's church. I had a group that met one Sabbath a month after church called Apologetics Group. Creation, evolution, does God know the future? Why did Jesus have to die? We discussed all that stuff. 15, 20 people. It's fun. We're not going to do this alone. Everywhere in the Bible, it's a church. We're going to do this together. Yes, you're probably right now alone or one or two somewhere. We have to do it that way. But the Bible's picture is Hebrews 10:25, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. Don't neglect meeting and worshiping together, especially as the second coming day comes closer. We can't do this by ourselves. Bible doesn't count just, okay, I watched a sermon, read a book, read a poem, read a Bible verse, walked on the beach. Bible wants a church. Everywhere in the book of Revelation, there's a great multitude, a church, standing around the throne of God, standing on the sea of glass. It's never one by one, it's a church. Jesus standing in the middle of the seven candlesticks, church. It's a witness. God wants a witness to stand here for Him in the world, to say, there it is. If we're just sitting in our backyard, no one sits on their front porch anymore. We're all in our backyard with fences and trees and hedges. We're in our house watching a sermon. No one knows that we're standing there with God, that we believe in God. God wants a witness. A few hundred people get together and sing worship to God, and they put a building up and a complex, and He said, there's the church. It's a witness. We have a voice. I don't believe in the looting and the violence, but I agree with people who care enough about what they want to stand for. Get out of the car, get in the car, drive downtown, get in a march, ride down a road, don't know what's going to happen. Take a stand. There's a voice. Stand for something. We live in Riverside here in California. They have a little cross up on Mount Rubidoux. Everyone can see it. There's a light. There it is. Some people got mad. It was on government property. Oh, it got raised $40,000 and they bought the land. Someone defaced it with graffiti last week. A bunch of people went and painted it over. It's a witness. We have a voice. We stand for something. The world knows who we are. Peter denies Jesus. No, we're going to stand. We're with Him. Proud for the world to know. The Bible says Jesus loved the church and gave Himself for it. Jesus died for the church. He says, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Not perfect. But someday we will be a church that is white hot, that loves people, that stands for God. I'm not giving up on the church. Well, that's my testimony why I love the church. Why am I still an Adventist? Wherever you are, whoever you are, no problem. The Bible says in Revelation 12:17, someday there will be a remnant, a group of people at the end of the world that are the remnant of the church over the thousands of years, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. We can have a lot of different views of what the testimony of Jesus is, but the Bible's pretty clear that Jesus came to give a testimony about His Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Come down to clear up the lies Satan has told about the Father. So whatever that final church is going to be at the end of the world, that has to lift up the character of God. You can't stand it when they hear people say, I'm sick and I'm trying to figure out why, what lesson God is trying to teach me. Someone says, someone died, well, God took them. We don't believe God burns people in hell and tortures them forever. We don't believe that Jesus died to satisfy an angry, bloodthirsty God, took out his wrath upon him. We stand for something truthful about God. I had someone take me to task one time. We were in Cancun. I'm speaking for faculty, beautiful people. And I love this couple. We were in choir together 40 years ago. We loved God together. But he wanted to stand for a little mixture of God is love and God is justice. He said, Pastor Dan, you're a little too far over on the love and not enough balance of the justice. Another guy took me to task down in Orange County. I said, I may be wrong. And if I get to heaven and I find out that I was wrong and I made God nicer than he really is, then I'm sorry. But if I have to choose between two possible ways of coming to God, one way would be to emphasize the justice, and God catches me and he says, it was heartbreaking to hear what you said about me. I'm not that. I am not that, Dan. But if God says to me, thank you, you made me a little better than I really am, a little more loving, but thank you for what you said, I'd rather that. If I have to choose, which way? So we want to give the testimony of Jesus about God. God is like, this is God talk. I'm proud to be part of a church that lives 8 or 10 or 12 years longer. We are in the middle of a blue zone here. I'm proud of a church that doesn't believe, we're the only church in the world that doesn't believe that God burns people in hell. And we keep all 10 commandments, it says. And we keep the Sabbath. We will not change. Not going to show up in heaven and say, I hope it's okay, God, but we moved the day over to here. No, I'm not doing that. Proud. I love the church with all its mistakes and problems. Jesus Church, I will build my church. Don't get too comfortable just watching on the computer or on a phone or a television. If you can't, there's no other way, fine. My mother's here in the villa. But be part of a church, part of a Romans 16. I'm proud to be with a church. I chose years ago, with all the mistakes, I'm going to stay and do the best I can to make the church better. A church that will honor God, that is full of love, that is full of Jesus. I hope you'll stay with the church, love the church. This is God Talk. God bless.